until it was put to the test. The other thing that we took away from that experience was a resolve that we would help not only the people of India, but elsewhere in the world as well. And so when the crisis moved to Indonesia, as it's moved to other parts of Southeast Asia, as it continues to move with COVID-19 to other parts of the world, we have said we will be there. And so many companies have been. And I think we have shown that when we do this kind of work, we can bring to life what is the best of what it means to be a global business community. And while it's nice to get an award, the truth is one of the defining cultural attributes of our work from day one has always been a resolve that we're not doing this to win awards. We're not doing it for nice news stories. We're doing it because we know that when we do, we can save people's lives. And now we can look back some months later, and obviously we're not out of this pandemic yet, but look at how far we have come. Last week, we reached a milestone. There are now 650 million people in India alone that have had at least a first shot of a vaccine. As a planet, we have 3.5 billion people who have received a first shot. And when Prime Minister Modi and President Biden met, they were able to reflect on what we, together with others, had been able to bring to the table and the difference it had made. It is that kind of difference that we're going to need to make in the future. We're going to need to make that difference across Asia as the United States focuses more on its relationships with India and with the entire Asian continent, as well as with Australia and New Zealand. And we're going to need to bring this capability to bear in other humanitarian crises as well. But when we conclude this year, we will conclude it knowing something that we didn't know when the year began. We will know what we can do when we call on the best of ourselves. That's what this award is really about. And so for me, it's not about what Microsoft did. It's not about what I did. It's about what we all did together. And even more than that, it's about what we can all do together in the years ahead. Someday there will be an award given to that, and that will be an award worth receiving for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And as you noted, the collaborative experience here was certainly one for the history books. Next, we turn to Arvind Krishna of IBM. IBM, with its significant presence and experience in India, saw immediately that this crisis was of an unprecedented magnitude. And Arvind, you knew well the capabilities that India had. Your own personal connection to India as a son of an IAS officer was important to ensuring that we were working effectively with the Indian government. But you also worked assiduously to ensure that the US government mounted a strong response. In fact, what could have been a sore point in our bilateral relationship instead became an area of deeper collaboration. Arvind, we've seen the United States and India redouble their commitment to fight the pandemic globally. And Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, both in their bilateral meetings a few weeks ago, and in the Quad and in the Global Summit on COVID, reiterated their commitment to work together to beat the pandemic globally. Can you share with us why the US-India partnership on COVID is so important? And can the public-private nature of this pandemic response be a blueprint for solving other big challenges? Thank you, Arvind.
Thank you, Nisha, and thank you, Amitabh Kant. My deepest thanks to the US-India Business Council for this award and to the Government of India for its long-standing partnership. The COVID-19 pandemic has been the biggest challenge of our lifetimes. Stopping its spread is a global problem that demands a global response. I would also like to recognize that no country has had greater challenges on COVID than India. Protecting so many people and ensuring that accurate information is shared and widely available are daunting tasks. As you said, Nisha, public-private partnerships are critical to pandemic response as well as solving other big challenges. I'm proud of the difference that IBM employees in India are making by volunteering their time, energy, and expertise to help. We have taken direct and urgent actions to support those IBMers, expanding medical coverage, increasing vaccination programs, access to health professionals, and much more. I am honored to serve alongside my fellow CEOs as co-chair of the Global Task Force on Pandemic Response, founded with the support of the US-India Business Council. I'm also thankful for IBM's direct partnerships with the Indian government, the US government, and USIBC to accelerate critical aid. That includes donating funds for thousands of oxygen concentrators, working with local partners to fund emergency hospital beds, and more. Together, we will continue to expedite medical supplies and other assistance. Defeating COVID-19 is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires collaboration, innovation, and endurance. But I am confident that by continuing to work together, we will find our way through this difficult time and prevail. Thank you again for the great honor of this award and for all that you do.
Thank you, Arvind, and thank you again to Julie Sweet and Brad Smith, as well as to our colleagues across the United States and in India who stepped up when it was needed most.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Bharati Pravan Pawar, the Union Minister for Health and Family Welfare. In addition to her ministerial duties, Dr. Pawar serves as a Member of Parliament from the state of Maharashtra, which is where Abbott India is headquartered. I also wanted to personally recognize Dr. Pawar in our work towards eradicating malnutrition. It's another area of great passion and interest, and indeed expertise for Abbott, and we express our appreciation for her great efforts in this area. As Minister of State, she plays a key role in cooperative efforts between the Indian and US governments to address global health threats, including the Indo-US Health Dialogue, which India hosted last week. Dr. Pawar, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your remarks.
Namaskar. Thank you, Mr. Demin Halloran from Abbott for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to address the USIBC India IDEA Summit and 46th annual meeting. I also wish to thank the organizers, including Ms. Nisha Beswal, President of USIBC, and Ms. Ambika Sharma, Managing Director, India USIBC, for the opportunity to address the August gathering of global experts and leaders from both US and India. Ladies and gentlemen, as a Minister of State and Health and Family Welfare, I would like to make a special mention that India and USA has a long history of collaboration in multiple areas of advanced healthcare. Eminent leaders such as our ex-Prime Minister of India, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, had referred US as a natural allies, and we have come a long way in supporting each other, whether in terms of vaccines or in terms of access to providing generic medicines, as India has a long-standing history here. Also, under the dynamic leadership of our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, we have successfully concluded the comprehensive strategic partnership dialogue, which also stress on science and technology collaborations. I am hopeful that we will be able to jointly work on areas of vaccine development, COVID response, sharing best practices, and simplifying supply chain management, which will help in revival of both the economies in the post-COVID era. This also makes me feel that the theme of US IBC Ideas Summit is very pertinent as it focuses on from recovery to resurgence, as I strongly believe that the ideas generated from this summit will help in bridging the gaps in healthcare. The other areas in healthcare where there are ongoing collaborations are injury prevention and control, antimicrobial resistance, HIV/AIDS, engagement with US FDA, funding clinical research fellowships for early and mid-career scientists within India and the USA will surely contribute a building a strong, sustainable healthcare system with skilled healthcare professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to say that under the visionary leadership of our Prime Minister, the efforts of the Government of India is to work holistically and emphasis is on preventive care, while also giving priority to modern treatment facilities. The efforts is to reduce the cost of treating for the poor and at the same time on increasing the number of doctors rapidly. The Government of India under Ayushman Bharat scheme is working to establish about 1.5 million health and wellness centers in remote areas. I am also glad to note that our government has launched a landmark Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission on 27 September based on the foundations laid down in the form of Jandhan, Aadhaar and Mobile, Trinity and other digital initiative of the government. Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission will create a seamless online platform through the provision of a wide range of data, information and infrastructure services. It will function by duly leveraging upon open, interoperable, standards-based digital system while ensuring the security, confidentiality and privacy of health-related personal information. The mission will enable access and exchange of longitudinal health records of citizens with their consent. This mission will create interoperability within the digital health ecosystem, similar to the role played by the unified payments interference in revolutionizing payments. Citizens will only be a click away from accessing healthcare facilities. Friends, unprecedented reforms are taking place in medical education to transform India's health sector. For the last 7-8 years, more doctors and paramedicals manpower have been prepared in the country than before. Work on mission mode is also going on regarding modern technology related to health, research related to biotechnology, self-reliance in medicines and equipment. The way India has shown its capacity in the development and manufacturing of corona vaccines, it fills us with pride. PLI schemes for raw material of health equipment and medicines are also giving a lot of momentum to the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign in this sphere. Ladies and gentlemen, I would urge and request all international partners to join India in its manufacturing initiatives and support mutual growth. My best wishes to all, and India would be extremely happy to partner with USA in the area of healthcare and advanced life sciences technologies. Also my best wishes to the healthcare panel, which follows on cutting-edge technologies to manage health emergencies with experts from India and USA. And I'm quite hopeful for strong collaboration between the two nations. Dhanyavad. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Pawar, for your remarks. And let me welcome the panel on topic today, cutting edge to manage health emergencies. Uh, the onset of COVID-19 has been one of the most significant black swan events for the entire history of humanity. And the existential threat that affected lives, livelihoods, and ways of living. While the primary force of threat looks set to recede, the secondary consequences are set to remain with us for a long time, particularly in terms of economic security, ways of living and working, travel and leisure habits, as well as in terms of social and cultural interactions. But this global crisis has not been without its positive consequences as well, as in the speed with which the global scientific and medical community came together to develop vaccines, the rapidity with which medical facilities were ramped up by the governments and the private sector, as well as the convergence of actions across societies and communities around common actions to combat the pandemic. What I have is a very distinguished panel today to discuss these issues in more detail. And let me start with introducing the panel members. Uh, I have Dr. Gary Disbrow with us today. He is the Director, Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. His position related to advanced development and procurement of medical countermeasures against threat to public health. He's also been the Director of Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Division, and before that involved with as the Ebola Incident Coordinator. And his efforts led to the first Ebola vaccine to be launched in 2019. And prior to being with the government, he was the Assistant Professor of Oncology and Pathology at Georgetown Medical Center. We also have Professor Balram Bhargav with us, Secretary of Department of Health Research, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. He's also the Director General of Indian Council of Medical Research. He's a cardiologist, has pioneered several techniques in interventional cardiology, has made vital contributions in the fields such as biomedical innovation, public health, medical education, and medical research. He established the India Stanford Biodesign Program, an interdisciplinary fellowship program to foster innovation, design, and low-cost implants and devices. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Damien Holloran, Global Vice President, Infectious Disease, Emerging Markets, Rapid Diagnostics at Abbott. He's responsible for concept to commercialization of products and solutions that fit the needs of every care setting. He has over 30 years of leadership across a range of businesses, hospital products, international supply chain, pharmaceutical, medical devices, nutrition, and infectious diseases in emerging markets. Let me also welcome Dr. Phil Febo, Chief Medical Officer at Illumina Inc. He has a successful track record of translation research, clinical excellence, and for embedding molecular insights into clinical care. Before joining Illumina, Dr. Febo served as CMO of Genomic Health. Prior to that, he was professor of medicine and urology at the University of California, San Francisco. He has over 25 years experience in working at leading institutions throughout the United States. Welcome all. Let me start with inviting our panelists to make some opening remarks on the subject today. And if I may start with Dr. Gary Disbrow.
Thanks, Nitin. Truly appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here with such a distinguished group of individuals on this panel. I will keep my remarks very short because I'm interested in having a much more in-depth conversation with the panelists. The United States and India have had a long-standing bilateral relationship, working on many issues addressing mutually beneficial healthcare goals and priorities. And I will discuss many of these priorities as I address the questions moving forward and throughout the discussion. The United States agrees that combating and recovering from the effects of the pandemic does not only mean bringing the spread of the disease under control, it also means restoring and improving basic health care delivery, including through the health workforce, medical supply chain resilience, digital health approaches, and focus on primary health care. We appreciate our current collaborations and the potential for further collaborations moving forward, and I look forward to the discussions today. Thanks, Nitin.
Thank you. May I invite Professor Parram Bhargava to address? Thank you.
Good evening and good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure, and I thank US-India Business Council for inviting me to this extremely important panel discussion following the minister's speech. I think India, as the minister has clearly mentioned, India and the United States are natural partners, being the largest democracies in the world. And from this panel, what we can think about in healthcare, the areas that we could really work together is the COVID-19 and pandemic preparedness, number one. We could work on clinical trials, and they could be clinical trials which would be more bilateral clinical trials, which could be more cost effective. We can work on areas of capacity building for One Health and I think preparedness again. So that is an area where we are absolutely naive and we need some guidance. And we had excellent support from the CDC, which helped set up all our institutions in India for viral testing in the early part of this millennium and the first 10 years. And therefore, now we have become self-sufficient and been able to develop that. And the other area which is close to my heart is non-communicable diseases, where we know that the cutting edge research is being done in the United States, and we all, the world over, respects the research that is done in the US and the quality of research that is done in the US. The major thing that we can bring to that is our scientists who have excellent capacity, and at the same time, we would bring in the cost effectiveness to whatever is being developed, whether it be for communicable diseases or even non-communicable diseases. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhargava. May I now request Mr. Damian Halloran to make his opening remarks?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for arranging this US-India Business Council. I think the timing today is probably more important than we've ever had before. As has been previously mentioned, US and India have a strategic partnership for many decades, sharing a commitment to, as we all want to do, to improve the lives of our citizens and indeed economic prosperity. I was very touched by listening to some of the previous presenters, and it made me reflect a little bit on the last 2 years and the true heroes of the pandemic and the frontline workers that fought through this pandemic, not just in India, but around the world. And, we are very privileged in Abbott to be a small part of that in providing technologies and tools to assist fighting this pandemic, because I think COVID-19 has tested the resiliency of the world's healthcare ecosystems. And I think it's pushed medical device industry to recalibrate, and also to where testing needs to be done and how we deploy healthcare to our society. So what I'd like to do is make just 2 quick opening comments, and then I won't take any more time. First of all, I would like to add on to the comments that professor made from ICMR. I think he hit some critical points. One of them is in the whole area of technology. You know, we didn't think we could develop products and technology so quickly. I think the pandemic showed us how to do it. But not only that, but there's a great example with ICMR where we were bringing our self-test product to market, and we worked literally day and night with ICMR, on call with ICMR team 10, 11 o'clock at night their time, to accelerate the Navica app, which is the reader technology. But I thought it was a great example of public-private sector partnership and working together to make things happen. You know, the vaccines play a huge role in the future, and there's been a lot of discussion, and will be, and rightly so, on vaccines. But I think we also need to recognize that there is a need for, you know, the proper type of surveillance, screening, testing, social distancing, all of the other aspects, because, you know, with good testing, it'll help to identify, isolate, and reduce the spread of this virus, which we know is so infectious, and we saw the impact, how quickly it spread in India. And then secondly, the other comment I'd like to just make to wrap up would be on access. You know, we have a sustainability strategy in Abbott, and one of our clear focus areas is access and affordability for all, to reach more people in more places than ever before. And our mission very much aligns with Prime Minister Modi's plan to scale up primary healthcare through health and wellness centers under Atman Bharati. You know, but the point I want to make here is it's not just about us providing tests or nutrition products. It's about understanding that we have a role to play in building capability. And I think private industry has a role not just to provide product, but help engage and build the curriculum and the capabilities to enable quality healthcare at those decentralized settings. So I look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you very much for allowing some opening comments.
Thank you very much. Dr. Phil Febo, if you can have your opening comments.
Thank you. And on behalf of Illumina, I want to express our appreciation to participating in this important summit. And I want to thank US IBC for the opportunity to participate. Illumina is a company that makes technologies which detect changes in order to understand fundamentals of biology and increasingly to improve health and health care. We're moving to a time where an understanding of each of our genomes will be foundational to our health and to healthcare. And broadly, Illumina array and sequencing technologies are critical for that transformation of healthcare. Importantly, in the setting of the pandemic, Illumina's technologies have played a critical role in identifying the virus SARS-CoV-2, tracking the spread across the globe, and the development of diagnostics and vaccines to fight this pandemic. We've also played a fundamental role in understanding the variants as they emerge and the impact thereof. India is an important country in Illumina, and we tend to strengthen our presence in the years ahead. The topic of this panel, cutting-edge technologies to manage health emergencies, is of course very important and timely. And India has had a history of adopting having cutting-edge laboratories such as MedGenome, a private laboratory in India which procured the first HiSeq X, a very high throughput sequencer we manufactured several years ago. And they're moving forward with our newer sequencers and offering tests such as an IPT. India should be proud that it has laboratories that rapidly applied our technologies during this pandemic in order to identify emerging variants. It was the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology in Delhi that was the first lab in the world to adopt and run our COVID-seq test. And I've been impressed by the number of papers and manuscripts as they took the lessons they learned and showed the rest of the world how sequencing could be used to identify variants, identify the emergence of variants, and how important that was to really understand this pandemic. We continue to collaborate with governments, scientists, researchers around the world, providing technology to support and track transmission and develop therapies and vaccines to ensure long-term global safety and security. And we see India's leadership role in the Asia Pacific region and globally continue to rise. As we know, India has emerged as a critical partner in the manufacture and distribution of vaccines to developed nations. And under the Quad vaccine partnerships, at least 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses manufactured in India will be delivered by the end of 2022. That is incredible. So both in genomic sequencing using our technologies and manufacturing of vaccines, India shows incredible leadership. This will help us get through the pandemic. And while we need to be cautious about the secondary impact of the pandemics, we can also be optimistic because of the rapid learning and development of capabilities that have occurred in India during this time. Those capabilities can be applied more broadly to improve health and healthcare going forward. Once again, we value the close collaboration with the Indian government and key institutions, and personally excited about the potential to do more and happy to participate in today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Febo. Let me start with a few questions for Dr. Disbrow. We've seen United States right at the forefront of the global battle against the pandemic, particularly in terms of developing the vaccines. And the US government had to work closely with the medical community, scientists, and private sector to craft a robust response to the COVID-19. Given your experience, direct experience in this, both in the realm of working in the trenches and policy formulation, what would be the key learnings and takeaways that will serve to combat such medical emergencies in the future? What do countries and institutions need to do to craft a faster and a more effective response to such situations?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And so, starting at home, we've made great strides in the response. Over 397 million doses of vaccine administered, over 2.7 million treatment courses of therapeutics delivered, and over 65% of the US population receiving at least one dose, with 56% fully vaccinated. And the US is committed to providing 1.1 billion doses of vaccine globally. But to your specific question, the key lesson learned was that public-private partnership is essential, and expedited development and the government assuming the financial risk were essential. The US government, assumed the financial burden of scaling up and manufacturing the process while supporting the large clinical trials to determine safety and efficacy of the vaccine, so that if safety and efficacy were shown, we would have doses available. And this parallel development allowed for vaccine efficacy trials and vaccine availability in as short as 9 months. We and others, along with our counterparts in India, have identified the supply chain as a substantial risk. This includes personal protective equipment, active pharmaceutical ingredients, diagnostic components and ancillaries, vaccine raw materials, consumables necessary for drug manufacturing, fill finish capacity, needles and syringes and vials. And for each of those that we evaluate, there are second and third order effects for their suppliers that we need to be conscious of. We are making investments to expand capacity for each of these areas to create redundancy in the supply chain. And these efforts will increase resiliency within the supply chain, both nationally and globally. And yet we must do more. And the administration has released the Pandemic Preparedness Plan with bold goals to better prepare for future pandemics. And I think this is a key for not only the US, but also for our global partners to look at. And the USG will invest in the development of prototype vaccines for the top 20 pathogens with pandemic potential, therapeutics and antivirals for those top 20 pathogens, as well as diagnostics that cut across those pathogens. And hopefully some of those would be agnostic to the pathogen as well. We need to support the clinical studies now to show that these therapeutics and vaccines are safe, and for vaccines immunogenic and efficacy where possible. And equally important, we need to manufacture these vaccines at commercial scale and validate the manufacturing process now so that we are better prepared to address any of the future pandemics. And we'd be happy to engage with you in the future as we move forward with implementing these plans.
Thank you. If I may come to you, Professor Bhargava, Um, we've heard, how what the learnings have been in the United States. India, of course, had a particular challenge in battling this pandemic, particularly in terms of the scale and diversity of its population, as well as in terms of access to medical care, both in terms of physical availability as well as affordability. Uh, in terms of the pandemic also saw significant enhancement of government funding for improving public healthcare facilities. Uh, how would you look at this last 18 odd months in terms of key learnings from an India perspective in terms of adopting scalable technology as well as its deployment across such a large population base?
Yeah, I think this pandemic is something, as I would say, like the Second World War, and the United States took the opportunity at the time of the Second World War and set up the NIH and set up the VA system. The United Kingdom took this opportunity and set up the NHS after the Second World War. These have been robust organizations which have tremendously helped these nations tremendously. So, taking a cue from that, the Indian government at this point in time is taking the opportunity of this pandemic to develop the healthcare system in every which way, whether it be biological biotechnology, whether it be health infrastructure, whether it be for universal health coverage. So the government is working very hard, and the momentum that we have achieved during this COVID pandemic, having given 920 million doses of vaccination over the last 18 months, more than 600 million tests being done across the country in these 18 months. So India has realized that there is a capability which is a latent capability which has to be uh, uh, unleashed in some which way, and the help which other countries have provided us have been very good, and the one provided by the United States has been phenomenal, particularly during the second wave, and also for the some of the components for the vaccine as well as the testing equipment. How I look at it is that India is poised for a great time as far as healthcare and health infrastructure development is concerned. And this collaboration that we have between India and the US, the North South collaboration, we have to now, as an example of Quad has been given for vaccine manufacture, we have to utilize this North South collaboration for the benefit of the South, whether it be the Far East or it be African nations. And there we together can contribute in bringing new technologies at a lower cost and scaling it up and helping in capacity building in the region and training people in the region together, again at a lower cost, so that it may benefit mankind as a whole. So, from the government of India's perspective, we are now really realized, and I think all party lines have realized that health is a very important agenda, and we need to invest immensely on healthcare, and therefore the Ayushman Bharat and the Universal Health Program has been launched 2 years back, and that is steadily gaining momentum. And the National Digital Health Mission has also been launched about 2 weeks back. So I think there is going to be huge opportunities for key players from the US to manufacture in India, and it would be probably a dream come true if we can learn from what has happened with the automobile industry, with the Japanese setting up plants, and then it opened up the Pandora's box, and everyone started setting up plants in India for manufacturing of cars. This was in the early 80s. Now, for medical devices and diagnostics, and if companies like Abbott and Illumina and of the US set up their manufacturing plants in India and ensure that will ensure that the entire Far East market and the African market can be taken care of with low investment. These are some of the and India is very committed, as you heard the minister also talk, that we are natural partners and two largest democracies in the world with like-mindedness, and therefore what we have learned from this pandemic is that we have to be more closely united as democracies to fight these blueprint viruses of the WHO blueprint, and work on the principles of One Health, and I think share our data, share our knowledge, and learn. So I think we have a lot to learn from the United States, and there can be some things where we could also uh, uh, teach the United States, and therefore it will be a two-way channel. So I hope that will happen with the visit of our Prime Minister earlier last month, and with the U.S. Business dialogue, that is the U.S. health dialogue that we had last week with the Assistant Secretary of HHS, Madam Lois, visit us, and we did sign some agreements. So I think sky's the limit with two big democracies uniting. I think it can be a huge, big program for the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhargava. I just wanted to pick up on one point that you mentioned about the launch of National Digital Health Mission, and it's early days, and you mentioned it's been 2 weeks. But it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on how this can develop into a comprehensive and a universal healthcare safety net which covers our entire population.
Yeah, I think it is really premature to really comment on how it is going to unfold. Having said that, I think it is a very ambitious plan. Yes, we are planning to have electronic health records of every individual in the country, which is 1.4 billion population, which is going to be difficult. We are also wanting to learn from the U.S. experience, where from the U.S. experience of Obamacare and other issues, where there was a lot of burnout of physicians. There was a lot of burnout of physicians in terms of data entry and spending time on just rather than just writing down small notes on the case sheets, to be doing it on the computer keyboard till late in the evenings. Despite the $17 billion that were provided as incentives by the US government, we have seen some roadblocks there. So I think we'll have to learn from those roadblocks in a big way. More importantly, we have to get our health infrastructure. The digital infrastructure is important, yes, but the health infrastructure of the hospitals, of the district hospitals, the medical colleges, the primary health centers, they need to be, the infrastructure need to be done up well, and they need to be electronic as well, so that we could embark on the journey of the National Digital Health Mission. But I think it's exciting times for us. But at the same time, there is some apprehension of how it unfolds with time to come. We have demonstrated it very well with the COVID app, where we are collecting the vaccination data. We have the data of all the individuals that have been tested positive, and we're utilizing that for compensation and all that data. So from that perspective, we have demonstrated in this pandemic that we can handle large volumes of data well, and let's hope we will be able to deliver the same for the digital health mission. So but more importantly, we need to learn from the positives as well as the negatives that the US has had whilst it was trying to develop the Obamacare and electronic health records, etc.
Thank you. So clearly identifying the need for collaboration in that space. Let me move to Mr. Damien Halleran. Abbott, we all know, has been at the forefront of launching multiple tests across the globe and support the governments in the diagnosis for timely management of the disease. the question is, of course, there's a lot of learning from here, how quickly, production was ramped up. But what would be the focus area for companies like yours going forward in enhancing R&D and innovation in diagnostic and devices space?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I would respond in kind of two segments, if I may. The first one is around innovation, and then the second area is in surveillance. So one of the things that really struck home to us in the innovation sector, because we've launched 12 tests for COVID, from PCR tests right through to antigen tests in the last 18 months, and 160 countries, over 1 billion tests now being deployed and tested in society. But as we've done that, we've seen there was two critical needs in innovation. One is the science. The science has to be top notch. You have to have the right quality for detection, infection detection, and infectious patients. But secondly, you need to also understand the needs of society. And what I mean by that is innovation is about the science, but it's also about the utility of where you're going to use the test. And the way we look at it is there's a symptomatic need where people are presenting themselves to care with symptoms. So you need to get testing. But there's also what I would class more like, safe economic recovery, where you do surveillance. Because one of the societal scars that has been left from COVID is that people need to feel safe again, to socialize again. So what we've found is the need for a testing maturity continuum, from testing by a healthcare profession through an ultimately, self-swabbing, and ultimately the ability to provide a home test. And the reason we've really delved into this innovation space is the importance of the segments and the settings in which we have to deploy diagnostic tests. It has changed the face of diagnostic testing in relation to point of care acceptance. We're deploying tests in airports, in the travel sector, in education, which we all know is going to be fundamental to economic recovery, as well as the safety of our next generation. With Diwali season coming up, the importance of feeling safe again in events and social, gatherings. And also in pharmacies, and ultimately in home tests. And the other area we're looking at in innovation then as well is, we believe that respiratory tract infection will probably never be the same again, because historically, flu, strep, RSV, when someone presented themselves to care, it was presumptively diagnosed. But now, with the identical type of symptoms between flu and COVID, we really believe that a clinician, when they get a patient presenting themselves in the future, will have to differentially diagnose. So one of our innovations areas we're focusing on is making sure we develop diagnostic tests that will allow that differential diagnosis to occur, so the proper treatment path can occur. And then secondly, I want to talk a little bit about surveillance. So, if we could go back in time and say 2 years ago, what would we do differently? How would we be more prepared for a pandemic of this global nature? One of the things that we in Abbott have invested in to help fight, or indeed prevent, the next pandemic is we're expanding our surveillance efforts under the Abbott Pandemic Defense Coalition. So it's a first of its kind scientific and public health partnership dedicated to early detection and rapid response to pandemic threats, so that we can deploy better control mechanisms early. In fact, for more than 5 years right here in India, we've been working with YRG Care in Chennai in disease surveillance for HIV, hepatitis, and more. So this type of partnership in surveillance management as well as innovation, and Dr. Baraga earlier talked about the importance of working together collaboratively on clinicals. So we welcome the opportunity as we bring these flu COVID type tests to market in India, that we work with ICMR, with Dr. Bhargava's team to be able to bring technologies quickly to market and do the proper clinical research in India for India. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I may move to Dr. Febo, I think one of the questions about, is developing or creating a world-class vaccine production industry in India. And, there was reference to the recent Quad vaccine pact as well. So the question really I have for you is, how can India utilize some of the newer technologies like the next generation sequencing, etc., how these lessons learned can be extended into other areas like biosimilars?
Yeah, so it's been incredible to see India leverage its manufacturing capabilities and focus it on COVID and really indeed help itself and the globe get through this pandemic. As far as how next generation sequencing can further help India and the globe be ready for not only for what happened with this pandemic, but in the future for future pathogens of potential risk. The first step is, in order to take advantage of vaccine infrastructure, you have to know the pathogen. You have to identify the threat. And next generation sequencing rapidly identified SARS-CoV-2 when it emerged in China. And certainly was that kind of information and understanding the genome was critical to develop diagnostics and vaccines. And certainly Pfizer and Moderna started making vaccines in January and February of 2020, which prior was just not possible. So you have to have the infrastructure to identify the pathogen and the threat. And I really commend the Indian government because they're already forming the India SARS-CoV-2 Genomics Consortium, or INCASOG. This is a consortium of 28 national laboratories to monitor genomic variations in the SARS-CoV-2 on a regular basis through a multi-laboratory network. Not only will that aid in the understanding of how the virus spreads and evolves and provide information to aid public health response, it's a vital research consortium that will also assist in developing potential vaccines, because as this virus changes, do we have to adapt our vaccinations in case variants emerge that are less sensitive, or resistant to some of the vaccines and their protective events? This kind of capability can then be leveraged and integrated with a growing number of international activities to try to be proactive and understand the next pandemic. And consortiums like INCASOG can participate globally. I strongly encourage India to participate in those efforts because it does require a global understanding to identify emerging threats, use next generation sequencing, and then target those pathogens with that infrastructure. And the type of infrastructure that's critical for the development of emerging therapies to address, viruses can also be focused on non-communicable diseases in India as they become more and more important. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, metabolic diseases like diabetes, those kind of capabilities to truly understand the disease, understand the interactions between the host and the disease in order to better define therapies, better understand the role of therapies, can greatly enable India to really leapfrog their capabilities in health.
Thank you. I think I have two more questions to ask before we close. So let me come to you again, Dr. Disburn. There was a reference to the Quad and the agreement that was agreed at the time of the meeting between President Biden and PM Modi. How would you look at this? What are the areas of collaboration that you see between India and the US in dealing with these kind of global health threats?
So again, as I mentioned in my opening comments, we have a long-standing bilateral relationship working on many issues addressing mutually beneficial healthcare goals. And as you mentioned during the dialogue, 2 memorandum of understanding were signed, one between NIH and India Council of Medical Research, ICMR, renewing their commitment to undertake collaborative research in infectious disease and global health significance. And then HHS and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare formalized the joint commitment between the United States and India to strengthen and facilitate many aspects of scientific, regulatory, and health cooperation. And I know that antimicrobial resistance is another area of concern for both of us. And BARDA's CARB-X program and our joint efforts under AMR are another area for potential collaboration. BARDA through CARB-X is supporting an accelerator in India, the Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms. This is one of India's premier life science innovation and entrepreneurship technology hubs. We also have a partnership with Gangagen Pharmaceuticals, a lead optimization program there. Also with Klebsiella, and I hope I said that correctly. They're developing a treatment for multi-drug resistant Klebsiella pneumonia. Bugworks, which was one of our first awards that we made in India. They're starting their first in human phase 1 clinical trial, is currently enrolling patients in Australia. And then Gyrox, direct acting small molecule therapeutic. So I think there's tremendous amount of opportunity for collaboration, both on COVID-19 lessons learned. You have some of the largest biopharmaceutical manufacturing facilities in the world through the Serum Institute and BioE. I just really look forward to additional discussions on areas where we can collaborate.
Thank you. Professor Bhargav, if I can come to you on another matter that has been talked about quite a bit, is the challenge in India in the healthcare domain on the need for the public and private sector to come together for better healthcare outcomes. And this is also one of the things that is part of Ayushman Bharat. How can this trend be accelerated, especially in the light of this emergent sort of compulsions arising from the pandemic and obviously building the right healthcare ecosystem in the country?
Yeah, I think as has been mentioned that with the ICMR and the Bharat Biotech, we had an excellent private-public partnership with mutual respect, mutual trust, and were able to deliver the vaccine within 10 months, the whole virion vaccine. This was a classic example which will go down in the pages of history, how private-public partnership is successful, number one. Number two, how private-public partnerships are more important during the pandemic situation. More so because it's the government which is going to take the risk more than the public players. So that we have seen in the US Operation Warp Speed. We have seen it in India as well. And I think that is making the private-public partnership more relevant, more so in pandemics. And I think the country is moving in that direction, whether it be for biomedical devices, whether it be for diagnostics, whether it be for vaccines, or even for healthcare. It is going to be more and more private-public partnership. With as I emphasize on the fact that during the pandemic, the government has the capability to take the risk more. And if we are to move from being the pharmacy of the world with generics, and if we are wanting to move into the space of new drug discovery and new molecules, whether it be for AMR, whether it be for orphan drugs or for gene therapy and other areas, then we will have to work in a private-public partnership and ensure that these products are available at a low cost, and because once it's a private-public partnership, there is some benchmark setting in terms of that the public market will be protected, or some sort of a commitment that we will be able to provide for, because healthcare will have to be a mix of a socialistic model plus a commercial model.
Thank you, Professor Bhargava. May I just get the other panelists to quickly comment on this particular aspect of public-private partnership? Ms. Lauren, would you want to? give a brief comment on that, and then I can get to Dr. Further.
Sure. So I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I just want to reinforce again that, industry recognizes that public-private partnership is not just about providing a product. It's, as Dr. Bhargava said, it's about partnering and understanding how to deploy. But sometimes, the health infrastructure, the knowledge, and the deployment is important as well. So I think in a public-private partnership, it's a commitment to a solution. So, Ashban Bharat is very exciting, particularly for rapid diagnostics business, which I have responsibility for. And we have a real passion about how to get those tests close to the point of care and get a test in the moment that gives a diagnosis early in the treatment pattern and drives better health outcomes. So I think public-private partnership is a much bandied word. I think the criticality, as Doctor mentioned earlier, is to define the role of each party in working together. There's a commercial business interest, there's a societal interest, and most importantly, there's a public health interest. And I think that's where it's at. And the last comment I would make, and I know we're running out of time, is that, in disease detection, there's a real opportunity to partner together as well, to understand the epidemiologies and the priorities of a country, and then how industry, be it a pharmaceutical or diagnostics or nutrition or other, can partner together to develop the right technologies to enable diagnosis, treatment, and health outcomes. A classic example would be malnutrition. Do we really have a good malnutrition test today to enable better nutritional health, etc.? So very excited what we see the future that the Prime Minister is laying out with this vision. And we as a company haven't been in India for over 100 years, and pharmaceutical manufacturing and nutritional manufacturing already in the country. We're ready to go. We're ready to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. So positive comments there from the government and the private sector on the importance of public-private partnership. Lefebvre, we're really out of time, but if you have certain comments to make on this.
Yeah. So thank you, Nitin, and again, thank you for being invited to participate. India, as a country of 1.4 billion people and a leader in Southeast Asia, as well as the globe, has an incredible opportunity to build upon the learnings from the pandemic, build upon the infrastructure, build upon its established capabilities in manufacturing to focus that efforts on improving healthcare for all in India and having the rest of the world learn. Dr. Bhargava's comments about learning from the United States, learning from the world is important because I think with public-private partnerships, with the adoption of emerging technologies like next-generation sequencing, there's a real opportunity to avoid some of the mistakes, learn from the mistakes, take the good, take the new technologies. India has proven its ability and has pioneering laboratories that already have the cutting-edge technologies. How can you leverage that and build for a future of a healthier India, coming out of this pandemic stronger and looking forward? And Illumina stands to partner meaningfully, just as stated. It's not just about a product, it's about bringing that know-how and figuring out where incorporation of that technology into the fabric of healthcare can truly take India Health to the next level. And again, happy to participate today, and we look forward to participating over the next decade, indeed, and further to help India with these health challenges.
Thank you very much. So clearly, from the discussion today, we can see there are opportunities for India and US to learn from each other, working together, immense scope for collaborating. Public-private partnership, an important aspect of dealing with the challenges, and therefore putting right frameworks in place for that to be effective. Technology, digital innovation, clearly the need of the hour to be better prepared to deal with a similar situation ever in future. So I suppose there are a lot of learnings that we are taking away from this session. Let me thank my panelists. Thank you very much for your comments, and it's a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitin.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's an honor. I'm Nandini. I joined Uber in 2015 and have been part of building and growing Uber India's business for almost 6 years. And now I'm a senior director heading business development for Uber across Asia Pacific. 2 decades ago, when I was studying and living in Mumbai, I used to dread every monsoon season because it was impossible to find an auto or a taxi to go back home. And now I use Uber almost every day to go to work, to run an errand, or to even go see my parents out of town with an Uber intercity. Uber has changed the way we move today. And that's the incredible opportunity for Uber in India and for hundreds and millions of Indians. Uber was started by Travis Kalanick, and the idea struck him when he and his friend could not find a way to go home on a snowy night in Paris in 2008, and the rest is history. He was very committed to making Uber a success in India, and Uber launched in India when the first trip happened in the city of Bangalore in 2013. Uber, its product market fit very early, and that fabled hockey stick growth that I'm privileged and I'm proud to be a part of. Drivers love the opportunity to work with Uber, flexible earning opportunities with dignity. Consumers found a safe, affordable, and an easy way to move around town. And Uber became a central fabric of our cities. And personally, for me as a woman, it gave that immense independence, flexibility, and helped us bridge that gender commute gap. Now, 8 years into the country, we still have massive untapped potential. And we, the Uber leadership team, are focused on 2 things. First, we want to make Uber adapt to India. We want to move how India moves. We have launched new form factors and continuously evaluating. For instance, we have 2-wheeler, Moto, 3-wheeler, Uber Auto, live in India. And we recently launched shared buses. Secondly, we also want to be available in the heartland of the country. We will be live in 100 cities by the end of this month. And we know we are going to be there in several hundred more in the years to come. Amongst all this, COVID-19 hit us hard in India and also our business, the moving people. The first thing we did was to tell our customers to stop moving. It was a bold decision, but the right one, at a time of such uncertainty and medical advice. Second, we wanted to support our communities in such difficult times. We launched Uber Medic, a service to support our frontline workers to move our medical supplies and oxygen and in times of lockdowns in the safest way possible. Third, we supported our driver partners just to meet their basic needs at such times of uncertainty. We rallied. We created an Uber Driver Care Fund, which is supported by our partners, our employees, and by our ecosystem players. And today, we are 100% aligned with the government's agenda of vaccination. We are driving awareness and compensating our drivers to go take vaccines for the time off on the platform. And we are also supporting minority groups with free rides to go to vaccination centers because all of us need to get vaccinated as fast as possible. I'm happy to share that 200,000 driver partners have got first jab today already on our platform. And from here, it third is multimodal. We at Uber completely believe that all modes need to exist and they complement each other. We have partnered with the Delhi Metro to solve for first mile and last mile. We've worked with the top airports in the country and have also launched journey planning, which means providing real-time schedules and choice to the end consumer in the top cities so they can make an informed choice across different modes of options. Climate crisis. It is the crisis of the century, and we at Uber are committed to play our part in it. Lastly, Uber is in India for the long haul, and we want to innovate and enable and make a difference to this country. We are also completely aligned with the top of mind priorities for the government, reducing carbon emissions and creating livelihoods as we come out of this pandemic. Thank you so much for this opportunity. On behalf of the Uber India team, I wish this summit an incredible success.
Good evening. We have concluded today the first day of the India Ideas Summit, celebrating our 46th AGM of USIBC. We have had an interesting day, which started with Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla and US Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman, providing reflection on how Prime Minister Modi and President Biden are working to further elevate a bilateral strategic relationship cutting across defense and security issues. These include new initiatives under the Quad, focusing on vaccine diplomacy, technology, and climate. As echoed by some of the speakers today, the pandemic has been unprecedented and disruptive for both economy and society. Even as the novel coronavirus continues to loom large over our lives, dictating how much each of us have to live with this, work, and interact, it is likely to lead to long-term shifts to consumer behavior, governance models and corporate decision-making process as well. Having said that, it has created new openings for managing systematic changes and overcoming the VUCA complexity and the world in which we are going to live in future. I quote Walt Disney, who once famously said somewhat bluntly, "You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you." The observation is now coming true for many of the entrepreneurs and businesses, like all of you who are representing at the AGM, taking the emerging challenges head on. The most tangible impact that has been witnessed is on technology, adoption, and general versatility with digital commerce and content. There is also perceptible acceleration for financial inclusion, adoption of technology, and e-governance from governments around the world as like-minded democracies seek redundancies in critical supply chains. The private sector, as we all heard, have adapted their decision-making processes to accomplish smarter data and digitally driven operations and to invest in intelligent workflow based on the automations. The discussions held between the ministers and the private sector, which you all heard towards the end with Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar in particular, he very clearly outlined how some of these elements are giving rise to new opportunities and forms a basis for more intense and economic form of engagement, really increasing reliance on artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is going to be the need of the hour, as these all will be the gateways for business sustainability as well as enabling government to effectively deal with healthcare emergencies. Digital technologies are becoming critical in the fight against the ongoing pandemic. The session on technology and health emergencies highlighted the role how technology and innovation are set to positively impact the delivery of healthcare worldwide with collaborations between industry and the governments. We heard our minister and other leading speakers from the pharma industry that how critical it is going to be, and this will be the way forward. We hope that you all had enjoyed today's all sessions, found them useful, and we look forward to your tuning in tomorrow for some interesting conversations in waiting on climate change and sustainability with US Special Climate Envoy John Kerry and Minister Bhupender Yadav. We are also going to have a very interesting discussion on trade and finance with our Industry and Commerce Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and lastly, a keynote address by External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. With that, I thank you once again on behalf of the US India Business Council and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you.